It's now my pleasure to invite our panelists to the stage. Please welcome Mayor of Helsinki, Juhana Vartiainen, Director of Industrial Relations from the Chemical Industry Federation of Finland, Minna Etu-Seppälä, and Chief Economist of the Central Organization of Finnish Trade Unions, Ilkka, Kaukoranta. I'll start with a little warm-up and give you a chance to comment and reflect on the presentations we heard before the coffee break. What kind of takeaways did you pick from the authors' presentations? If I start with Ilkka or Minna, because we already heard some of Juhana's comments before the coffee break.
I think it really highlights that the Nordic models are quite similar. The collective bargaining and coordination are key to the functioning of the labor market in all the Nordics, and also that the model is in a constant state of change, and it is being challenged from both I think the political side, but also from other dynamics that are leading to a lower rate of unionization, and that could lead to a lower rate of coverage for collective bargaining, which would be a huge shift in the Nordic model.
Minna.
Yes, as an export industry representative, I found it interesting and also delighted that in other Scandinavian countries as well, the importance of the export industry has recognized in these models, and the link to the competitiveness and also the job growth. So that was, I think, we have, like Ilkka said, many similarities. Maybe the few things I missed a bit, and one is the link of the wage formation or wage increases to the productivity in these different countries, because we know that compared to Sweden, the productivity and wage increases tend to go hand in hand. And in Finland, at some point, we dropped the wage increases, continued to grow, and the productivity started declining. So that was one, maybe an interesting thing that later on would be, at least in my interest. And then I think also when you talk about the public sector, which is not my field, but I say that maybe if I compare to the Finnish situation, also the state of the public finances is something when you start fixing or increasing wages in the public sector. And the fourth thing I like to mention is there was a lot of talk about lack of workforce, but also there is a lack of workforce in every sector. So like if you raise wages in public sector to attract to public sector people, then you end up having problems in some other sectors. So that we are competing from the same youngsters or workforce, and that's one fun thing I listened here.
Juhana.
Well, I used to think about these issues before I went into politics, and reading the paper by Lars Calmfors was encouraging in as much as it seems to me that these basic frameworks of thought and models, they are still valid. I share Lars' conclusions, and it was an interesting survey of what are known about these issues of pattern bargaining. I take, however, a more optimistic view of these pattern bargaining and the current state of affairs in the Nordic countries by and large. I think that this having some wage leadership, which for many reasons now happens to sit with the tradable sectors, plus then local bargains. I don't like the word drift, since these are rational bargaining or market outcomes. But this is a good combination, as I tried to indicate with what I said about Helsinki, so that somehow there is a coordination element, and pattern bargaining is the modern way of centralizing. So we get the benefits of coordination plus local flexibility, mostly upwards. And I don't see wage formation as a big problem for the Nordic society model by and large.
Lars Calmfors mentioned in his article that there are some developments that are challenging the Nordic model or the leadership of the tradable sector, for example, the aging of the population. Do you see any other specific challenges? And now maybe we already heard this criticism that maybe there is no Nordic model. So now to be specific, we maybe talk now about Finland because that's the field you know the best and I know maybe the best. So are there any other specific challenges than aging of the population? How do you see it?
Well, I think one challenge for pattern bargaining is the shift away from sectoral bargaining to firm-level bargaining. I don't think it's in the long run. I don't think it's sustainable to have a coordinated pattern bargaining if the wage setting is moved from a sectoral level to a firm or especially individual level. And we see that from the forest sector. The sort of transparency in terms of what are the actual wage agreements inside the forest sector is quite low. So it is difficult to sort of match that pattern if you don't see the pattern.
Yes, I would say that there was some discussions on the transferring to the local bargaining, and this is one feature of that. I think the whole system is challenged because even in the sectoral level negotiations, there is a strong need from the employer's side to have more flexibility at the local level. And that's why I think it's due to the recession in 1990s in Finland, then we have the economic recession in 2008, and I think we have added, at least in the chemical sector, each round, more flexibility. It is understood by the trade union in our case, but I think more and more this is testing the system, that if we can keep it in the sectoral level, if we want to keep the sectoral level agreement, which covers quite a lot of workforce, then the system needs to adapt to develop. And if it doesn't develop, then we end up having more separate systems. That's how I see it, and that's why we have stick to the sectoral level agreement, but we have said that we need to have flexibility and more means to react in different situations.
Juhana, challenges?
Well, demography is a huge challenge for the financing of the public welfare state, but again, I don't see the wage formation models as somehow the critical issue there. Even if some firms bargain locally, so what? Then they do. If these collective agreements, they will just set a floor for pay in different occupations, and perhaps even some minimum wage increase, and then local flexibility takes care of the rest. I fail to see why this would be a problem. It seems to me that it would be very near a well-functioning market solution. And as to the eventual decline in unionization, then we know from many countries like the Netherlands that the formal rate of unionization need not have a large impact on the comprehensiveness of collective agreements. Even in unorganized firms, the collective agreement increase just often serves as a kind of signal or signpost, and everybody then works accordingly. So I see huge economic problems for the financing of the welfare state by and large, but is the wage formation really the critical issue? Hardly, in my opinion.
Please.
I agree. I don't think the wage formation system is a problem in the Nordics. It's not something that needs to be fixed or needs to be changed, but it is a critical feature of the Nordic model. I sort of agree. I mean, a society can function without collective bargaining, and with shifting wage setting to a firm and individual level. That's a possible way forward in a society. We can organize a labor market in that sense. But if we shift to that sort of labor market system, then I don't think we can really talk about Nordic model in the sense that we've traditionally mean by Nordic model. I mean, of course, if you just sort of define Nordic model as whatever is the current policies of the Nordic countries, then of course the Nordic model would still exist. But I think it is a fundamental question in terms of the future of the Nordic model, whether we continue to have a centralized and coordinated collective bargaining.
But even Denmark is still in the Nordic family, but most collective agreements in Denmark are these, now consist of these minimum agreements. They only set a minimum wage level, and much of wage formation then happens locally. What's wrong with that?
Minna.
Yeah, I think the wage I think what we need to there is a need to develop the wage increase. How the wage increases and put in effect. Either it is a local way, like we have that you can agree basically on everything at the local level, but then you have if you don't manage to agree with the shop steward, you have the certain increases what you should follow. I think that's one thing, and it's more and more used in the private sector, and then I think and this is the mean to also to tackle. If someone's salary has left behind, or you fix these difficulties in salary, how it has prognosed. But then I don't know how it functions in the public sector, and then when we talked about the public sector and the wage need to also increase wages there, I think there needs to be some system as well, flexibility, and also, like I think someone said, that you need to acknowledge that I think Juhana said that not everyone gets then the same salary increase, and this is something we have practiced in the private sector for a long time. So, and still are practicing that not the general increases for everyone. There is general increase and then some specific targeted increase for certain individuals.
Ilkka mentioned here before that is something like that is the Nordic model, just whichever policies the Nordic countries are executing at the moment. And this is very interesting question, because as we heard before the coffee break, there was mentioned many times that Norway, Sweden, Denmark, Finland not so much, and Finland is the exception. Our current government had justified many of its reforms by using other Nordic countries as an example and a model to aim for. On the other hand, for example, Economist Sixten Korkman wrote on Monday's Helsinki Sanomat column that the decision to remove tax deductibility of the union membership fees is un-Nordic. So how do you see the last years? Are we moving towards a more Nordic model or away from it towards a more non-Nordic model?
Can I start?
Yes.
Well, Finland was the exception, at least in the respect that Finland was the only country where the labor market organizations were part of the political decision-making system. And now this has been dismantled, at least by this government. So, and this is a move towards Nordics. And then this new legislation, which says in vague terms, but it says that the national mediator should in their proposals, look at the overall functioning of the wage system. That's a good enough signal for them not to exceed the open sector's pay increase. And this corresponds, in my view, to the government decree, förordning in Sweden, which says that the National Mediation Office, Medlingsinstitutet, must sustain or support the role of the export tradable sector to uphold competitiveness. It's a bit vague as well, but it's basically a similar thing. So I think Finland has joined at least the Sweden-Finland club in that respect. So these would be two movements toward the Nordics.
In my view, the Nordic model, it's the three basic tenets are collective bargaining at a sectoral and national level also. Collective bargaining is one high quality social public services, the second, and the third is a good social safety net. And from that view, any policy change that erodes the social safety net or cuts public services or erodes collective bargaining in some way, or decentralizes collective bargaining to a more firm or individual level. Those are steps away from the Nordic model in the sort of idealized form of Nordic model. And from that view, I think all the Nordics have been drifting away from the Nordic model, and Finland more so than the others. And there is a sense of this dynamic where all the Nordics sort of follow each other away from the Nordic model. We can always justify a change away from the sort of idealized Nordic model by saying that, okay, some other country did that first, so that's part of the Nordic model. And we see that our colleagues in Sweden and elsewhere are worried about seeing what they see happening in Finland. They fear whether the sort of the same steps will happen there as well. So it is sort of a collective shift away.
Minna.
I would say that one thing is that we have moved towards European model. The second is that we have moved more towards the Scandinavian and Swedish model. And I think I have had the privilege of being in the negotiation early 2000 when we had centralized level collective bargaining system in this country. I think we have come quite far from that. So there is not anymore a cassette recorder model, which every sectoral organization and branches needed to adapt. So now you have more room to make maneuvers on the text issues in collective agreements, and also the wage increase structure. But I think, and this is healthy, and I think like the Nordic model, and we heard today that the importance of export industry and the close link to competitiveness and how that is then financing also the public sector is recognized, and I think it's very healthy to go to that direction. Then I think if you asked about the government legal reforms, I think although we didn't speak about the strikes, I say that the strike laws has come to the 2000th century. So in this government, and I've been also into early 2000 in the labor market field where we have spoken about these problems many years. So I think we are close to European model in many ways, but also now very healthy way closer to Scandinavian model.
Strikes was going to be my next question, because as we heard before the coffee break, there was mentioned that we could now somehow investigate Finland, because here we have more strikes than in other Nordic countries, and the current bargaining round is now coming to an end. It had weeks of industry action in the tradable sector. Minna knows that very well, but after that things went pretty smoothly, but still more strikes than in other Nordic countries. Why? Why are we seeing so much strikes here? You mentioned that the laws have now been updated, but they are mainly they mainly consider the political strikes, but we have seen non-political strikes, the normal industry action. Why are we seeing them that so much here in Finland?
Well, I think in each negotiation round, it depends on the question. There is no one simple answer. I think in this round, the difficulty was the level of wage increase target the trade unions set, and we felt it was too high comparing to the situation what we had in the export industry and in many fields of export industry. I think the second thing is why we end up having these strikes. If I have spoken with my colleagues in Sweden, and one thing is, like I said, we need to have the system to have flexibility to adapt to the current world, and unfortunately, if we want to have some changes in the text, we are talking today about the wage formation, but there is a lot of other things in the collective agreements that also creates costs and also sometimes creates the rigidity. So if we want to have change, they are difficult to of course, negotiate, and it takes time that both parties understand that we are serious, they are serious, and that's the reason sometimes these issues ended up in a strike situation. But I think in this round, there was no. This was just it needed to have time, and of course just a short comment. And when we talk about trade union density or employers' organization density, these are the cases when you need to reason each other to your members what is the conflict all about. And I think if in order to keep the density high, I think this is the key issue, that why we fight. What is the cause? And sometimes I think the root cause is not maybe understood on both sides, but there we have some work to do.
Juhana.
Well, many labor laws have been changed, and I see these strikes as an adjustment or transitional phase. But there is a very, at least at the surface, there's a very straightforward reason, and that's the dire situation of Finnish public finances. So that in the public sectors, there's a shortage of resources, and this creates a conflict with when the state can hardly seem to afford the pay increases that were stipulated by the open sector agreements. So once you have trumpeted in this pattern bargaining model and the state cannot even deliver that, then what would you expect? Of course, there are deeper reasons underneath, but Finland stands out for her public finances and the deficit and the debt, and this distinguishes us from the rest of the Nordics.
Ilkka. Yeah, I think that could explain the strikes in the public sector, but in the private sector, the story is different. We've had lots of strikes there also. I think in this sort of, if the actors are rational, in the steady state, we shouldn't have strikes. I think in principle, that parties should learn each other's sort of red lines and be able to navigate the negotiations in a way that they arrive at a satisfactory compromise without strikes, where they already know beforehand what kind of industrial action would result if they deviate from that sort of fair compromise. But we're not in a steady state. We're in a constant state of change, and I think a big part of that is that the employers in Finland have decided that they want a regime change in the in the labor market. They wanted to change the way wages are negotiated, with the decentralization away from the central bargaining. That was one, but also the shift towards more firm level bargaining within the context of sectoral bargaining, and also this pattern bargaining has been sort of an innovation that the employers have wanted to force upon the labor market. So we haven't been in a steady state, and because of that, and also the changes to the labor laws have also sort of disturb the steady state. So we're in a state of flux. So it's natural that we have disturbances.
Just one mystery to me is why this open sector industry, manufacturing industry leadership pattern bargaining became such an acrimonious issue in this country, whereas in Sweden the manufacturing industry partners, the unions and the employers could agree on that and then set an example for the rest of the economy. They sort of first agreed between each other, and then they said we are talking about 1997. And then they said, well, we expect now everybody else to follow suit and use the norm that we have set. And this created they got a lot of prestige for that. Whereas in Finland, the open sector labor market parties could never agree really on in such a way, and this is a mystery to me.
Yeah, I have still two more questions for you. First is that in Finland it seems that there is, as you mentioned, no shared view about the Finnish model. Now we don't have to talk about the Nordic model anymore, but the Finnish model for labor market between unions and industry associations, not even between different unions. And when you follow the debate that we are having like here, and you listen that when we are doing these Nordic comparisons, you often get this idea that the different parties here in Finland are more hostile towards each other versus pragmatic elsewhere. Is this true, and why is it so?
Well, like I said, that if you want to have changes, unfortunately, it tends to go. First, the collective agreement period expires, and then you go to a period where there are trade unions are allowed to strike. I think why we see this type of thing. When I mentioned that I talked with my colleagues in Sweden in the chemical sector, and then I asked, how come you always reach your agreement on the last day of your collective agreement expiry date? And they said, yes, we don't have much of a strike, but the problem is that in 10 years, how the texts in the collective agreements have developed, they said basically there is no development. So this is maybe the system differences, that if you want to, of course you can act and you can negotiate like that nothing changes and you agree just the wage increases, but that is not something, for instance, our companies expect. But I think this is the one reason. Of course, I agree with Ilkka, it shouldn't go like this. We should be more, and we discuss a lot between the negotiations, and we have good relationships, but still there are sometimes issues that are very difficult, and we know it. When we start negotiating, we know it, but then it's a matter of fact that if either party wants to go ahead, of course then is not the normal thing that each one of us gets exactly what we want. It's like we get some compromises and that's it. But this is like the basic reasons, I think.
Well, I think perhaps not an objective observer, but in my view, it is the employers, not the employees. But it's, I mean, in the sense that it is the employers who want change in the system. I mean, of course, employees always, we have our own demands in negotiations. But I think by and large, employees would be quite happy just getting a general increase in line with productivity and inflation, and keep the text as they are, and the employers want to change the texts to increase the flexibility at the local level, increase the firms say over various things in the job. And I fully understand why the employers want to sort of deviate from what we're used to, but that sort of radicalism is it leads to conflict.
Juhana, and
I
then
mean, the answer to your question, is there more hostility in Finland? It seems to me that the answer is yes. And then what will be the explanation? I don't have one. Perhaps one sort of ad hoc or deus ex machina answer would be Finns are just that kind of a nation. There was a civil war. Yes, there was a civil war and there was more communism in Finland or whatever. That's not the real answer, but it is undoubtedly true in my view.
Maybe just an example that during this negotiation round we wanted to have a change in one pay system clause, which is from 1960. And the reply, like you said, the text needs to be as they are. The trade union response was that they are very much up to date. These 1960 clauses, they match very well to 2025. And that's not really the case, but this is like Ilkka described it very well. The other party wants to stay, everything is like it is, and we want to have change, yeah.
mean, old is not always bad. Finland has been a republic for over 100 years. We don't want to change that.
Yes. Okay. But now just we have now had this like great publication by Nordic Council of Ministers, the new Nordic Economic Policy Review issue. We also last week got this paper by Antti Kauhanen from Etla about how to build a labor market model in Finland, some ideas about that. Now we have industrial peace for 2 years, maybe even for 3 years. Some might believe in that, I do not myself, but maybe for 2 years. So how should we make, what should we make with this time? We have ideas, we have realized that there are some flaws we should fix, maybe we should have a more like a shared understanding of a Finnish model. So what would be the next steps to do? Anyone?
Can I just say, look at what happened in Sweden before the industrial agreement. Then the parties within the manufacturing industries, the employers and the employees, they worked together. They had held many seminars. They worked on how local bargaining should proceed, and somehow they built this trust between themselves. This is not something that we sort of outsiders can force upon anybody, but can't you parties within each industry work for more understanding? Yeah. That would be.
I think we have a very good understanding, but it's in the sectoral level. So then whatever happens in the central level is sometimes it's not the picture you have at the sectoral level or at the company level. So this is the case that the company level, the relationships are very good, also at the sectoral level in many branches, but then it tends to politicize the whole question. But I think the main thing is that we need export industry still in Finland, and in order to get growth, we need to have a stable surrounding, and that's the aim everyone should aim at.
In the past, we had a system where the parties tried to agree on how to reform the system in the labor market, and I think it would be nice to return to that sort of world, but I'm not very optimistic. It seems that this sort of changes to the labor market and labor law has become far more politicized. It's not only up to the social partners to negotiate and have a common view. Now it seems that we've transferred to a system where it is in the end the government that decides in what direction we move the labor market into, and that reduces the scope and sort of possibility for that sort of negotiation between the labor market organizations. If there's always the outside option of the government doing what one party wants, then there's not really a good motivation to reach a fair compromise on the direction of change.
So I try to be optimistic and think that what should we do now with the fairly long industrial peace and all the good ideas we've had from researchers, but apparently there is nothing to be done.
I think that the thing is that the negotiations on wage increases is now in Finland on sectoral level. And I think we see still, sorry Ilkka, but we still see there are some hiccups on the central level that the system has changed. And I think we see a bit that influence also that will affect the negotiations at the sectoral level as well.
I think we do need to as a society to look for the ways that we can ensure that we maintain this system with sectoral bargaining and the Nordic model. And I think that some law changes will be needed. I don't know if that's something that we can find a common understanding with the employers, but that's something that I think we need to do sort of ensure that the extension of collective agreements remains in the future as well. We can change the way that works and reverse some of the changes the government has done during this period. But it's not a stable model for the labor market where we sort of move back and forth. But I think we need some law changes to ensure that we can maintain even the Nordic model we have at the moment.
Hey, thank you very much, Ilkka, Kaukoranta, Minna, Etu-Seppälä, and Juhana Vartiainen.
Thank you.